Now, I recently got an email from 38 Degrees. For everyone that doesn't know, 38 Degrees is a petition website. If you have a cause or anything like that, you go onto the site, you build up support, and it gets sent off to relevant bodies. This particular email was about a petition for the NHS, and it was essentially saying that we're happy to pay more into our NHS, pay more from national insurance, if it means that our NHS will be safe and will thrive. Now, initially you think, yes, I would, because of course you would. If you pay, an extra £1 or £2 from the amount of working people in this country, fantastic. That's 65 million extra a day, a month. It's fantastic numbers. But then I started looking into how money is actually being spent in the NHS and what's actually being given. Now, Theresa May has a fantastic habit of misleading numbers and, flat out lying. So when she comes out and saying that she's putting more money into the NHS, while this is almost true, it's still not really good enough, because putting more than £1 into a pot could be putting £1, 1p. The simple truth of the matter is we've never had so little going into our NHS, and yet the amount we're paying hasn't dropped. But the amount going to the NHS has, even after all these little extra bits. But that's not where it stops. That is just one extra straw that's waiting to break the camel's back. In addition to the NHS having such a tight stranglehold from the Conservatives, they are also being dictated heavily into how they can actually spend their money. For example, they must outsource into private companies like Virgin Care. From a standpoint, from an average business standpoint, outsourcing can make a lot of sense. It can be time consuming, it can be cost effective, it can be all these positive things. But when it comes to a system like the NHS, as experts around the country and global experts into healthcare systems have all agreed, it's not the way to go, and it's not how an NHS should function. But that's the way that it is functioning. And despite what Richard Branson outright lied about, it's not the most effective way of running the NHS from a patient standpoint, because there's already been so many issues. And it leaves the doors wide open for, again, Branson, who did this, to turn around and sue the NHS as a breach of contract, taking even more money out of the NHS's pot. That's not the final straw though. As another little bit, NHS hospitals, NHS buildings are being taxed on average around 20%. Now personally, I think it's stupid to tax a government building. It doesn't make a lot of sense. If I own a building, I'm not going to tax myself to own the building, because it's pointless. So taxing an NHS building just because it's an NHS building is obscene. But if you are one of these people who are, very pro-conservative, and you think that taxing an NHS building 20% is a good idea, fine. But here's the kicker. Private hospitals are now paying around 2% tax. So the private hospital, which we can't use unless we pay to use it, is getting a massive reduce in tax. And yet the public building that we all pay for is having an unbelievable amount taken away from it. That can't really be defended. So when you take into account of all these different things, it's not difficult to see why the NHS is failing, but it doesn't have to. It is being forced to fail because politicians like May, like Jeremy Hunt, like George Osborne, and unfortunately like Blair and a few other people in the Labour Party, they will make a lot of money because they have shares and interests in private healthcare. That's why the NHS is failing. And the simple fact that Jeremy Hunt will leave the House of Commons as a question about people with disabilities is coming up shows you the level of vile repulsiveness that leads the NHS. This man came out and said that junior doctors who say they can't work every single second of the day safely doesn't even want to take questions about something he's meant to be in charge of. The NHS is being set up to fail. Any way you look at it, that's just what's happening.